Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Distinctions for Life live stream. We are struggling with some technical difficulties on both ends. My guest today is switching to a new camera, and I'm on camera number 2 as well, in a completely sort of different way. And this really great, not hair light for me, but that I have for the new camera is great, but it looks like a J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie right now with the lens flare. So I'm going to go turn that one off and you get to see a little behind the scenes of how this kind of stuff works. Sometimes things are perfect and then other times they're not perfect. And that is just the way of life. There you go. There's your first distinction. Sometimes stuff don't work. And here, you want to get closer to Ron? No, yes, no. Do you? You don't know. You don't know if you want to get closer to me. It could be scary to you. I don't know. Okay, let's tighten up my little arm here. Hello, Ron, you're too low. Now you're kind of looking up at me. Ooh, let's do this. No, yep. I have a very adjustable thing as long as the camera doesn't fall completely off the thing, which could happen. It's been known to happen. Could happen. Hello, viewer. The craziness is that you are getting to experience today is special. All right. So we're on camera number 2, which obviously Ron did not have planned to be camera number 2. I had camera number 1, which was going to go. But this is the way things work, man, and you just got to roll with it. Our guest Denise Coulter will be on with us in just a little bit. She was set up, but for some reason her mic wasn't working, so she's switching to another room in her house. I'm thinking about doing a Distinction for Life video. No, not thinking about it. It's on the agenda. I'm going to do a part 2 on how to look good on Zoom. So if you haven't watched my how to look good on webcam video, you probably should in the new reality that we are in, because people are using that all the time. And I've given it to a number of people who have found it to be very useful, including Denise. As a matter of fact, she did a presentation on Monday and she told me that she used some of the tips that I had given in that video. So I would suggest you guys check that out if you haven't. If you are new to the channel, if this is on YouTube, then there's all kinds of stuff down below, and you can subscribe to the channel and set up for notifications, because I do these live streams every Tuesday and Thursday, at least through the end of May. I've committed to that. I started them during the great pandemic of 2020, which seems weird to say, but I'm going to say that because when people look at this in 10 years, that's what it's going to be, the great pandemic of 2020, to be followed by the great pandemic of 2025 and 2036. But people will remember this, when they're looking back on what Ron was doing in 2020. Denise is back, and you guys are going to get to find out if the working worked. And she can't hear me. Let me put her on screen and let's see if we can hear her, and you guys can watch us figure this out. Hey, Denise.
Say something so I know.
Did you say something? You were. I can hear you. But you can't hear me.
I can't hear you.
All right, you can't hear me.
You couldn't hear me.
Does now the question is, can other people hear me? Well, I am streaming live, but you can't hear me, so it's going to be kind of hard for you if you can't hear me. So what is your speaker set to on your side? My voice. See, I'm typing in the private chat, watchers. This is really great stuff. Let's see. I would tell you that you could pull this up on YouTube or Facebook and watch it while you're doing that, but that will even degrade things even more.
think I brought my phone with me. Could you go get my phone, Tim? No, never mind. It's right here.
I could do that if you want me to do that. Put your phone number in there, and I will. This will be Plan C. We're definitely on Plan C by this point. I'm on camera number 2, and so we're going to do Plan C, viewers, in the future. And Plan C is that we're going to call each other, and then I will. Ooh, that'll be interesting. Now, let me think. Yeah, I'll switch my headphones back to the phone, so when I hear you, it doesn't go. Because people can hear you when you speak. If you want to do your phone, you can type your phone number in that private chat number, and I will call it, or vice versa. You can't hear me, right? Oh, you can't hear me. Oh,
I wonder if my speakers.
I can hear you. What? Let's see. Do that, and then you can hear me over your phone. Oh, you can't hear me. You can't hear me when I'm saying that stuff anyway.
Yes, I do. You can hear me now. I can hear you now.
I can hear you.
There we go.
All right, now we're doing it. Technology. It's always something, isn't it? Hi, Denise.
Always. Hello, Ron. How are you? Let me get.
I'm good. Yeah, things are backwards, so you have to slide the opposite direction of what we.
I noticed
think we're going to do. So, as a way of introduction, Denise and I have known each other for a while. We are fellow Toastmasters, for one. We're in different clubs, but we both do Toastmasters. She's also part of a group that I am part of on Mondays here in Abilene called the Startup Community, where it's business owners, small business owners, and entrepreneurs that get together on a weekly basis. And normally we just sit around and commiserate, but often we have once a month we have trainings and stuff like that. Although that's actually done a bit of evolution. That is run by Mike Mikeworth, which I had on the live stream a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested in that, you can go to the YouTube channel and go back, or the Facebook page and go back. Denise spoke at that this week because that's actually one of the things that changed. Like every Monday now we seem to have a speaker, whereas before we didn't have speakers. But we're kind of doing a live event that we haven't been able to do. And after she spoke, I was like, Denise, you need to be on my show. So that I put her on the show. Denise, can you tell people what you do and how you came to do it?
Well, I do several things. 24 years ago, my mom and I opened a Subway restaurant in Cross Plains, Texas. And over the last 24 years, we have grown to 8 stores. My mom has since passed away, and my husband and I both work full-time in that business. I was concerned about my leadership and communication skills a few years ago, and I started reading John Maxwell. I've attended a lot of his trainings, and now I'm certified to teach his material, and have been to a lot of trainings on leadership, communication, sales, just about anything you can think of that he would teach.
And it looks like you're at work today. I think on Monday you were at home. Is that true?
Now, is what that?
I said, are you at work today?
I am in my office, yes. I was planning on doing it in the house where it would be quiet, but now we're in the office.
Okay, so do you work, is your office at your house?
It is. It's a separate building outside our house.
Okay. All right. And so that's, man, I keep wanting to move to one side. I'm just gonna move the camera. Camera has to do what I want. There we go. Now we're good. This is gonna be the most blooper-ridden live stream I've done so far. But I actually think of my videos, Often I think the bloopers are the best part.
Oh,
Which
absolutely.
I don't know what that says about me, but one other thing I can do, I can cheat. There you go. Now I go the right way. Now or do I? No, I was going the right way before. I don't know. All right, stop it, Ron. I really need to take Ron off the screen so that I stop looking at myself. That's something I find I do with Zoom calls too. Is I'm like looking at my own picture. It's like, I need to stop doing that. I'm a little narcissistic. So you have been doing. How long have you been doing the Subways? You said you and your mom started it. How long ago was that?
24 years ago.
24 years. So what is the biggest change you have seen in 24 years?
In Subway?
Yeah.
It has just happened in the last few weeks. Absolutely.
I guess that I should have known that. It's funny how you could. I'd ask that question. I think some deep business insight, some change but some change in the marketplace. How about that?
Absolutely.
Massive change in the marketplace. And I didn't start these live streams to talk about the pandemic, but you can't not, like, it just is gonna come up in all that we do. It's just everywhere. Before the pandemic, how about that? What was the biggest thing you saw in 24 years?
I've seen a lot of change in 24 years. I'm trying to think of the biggest one. We changed the way we cut the bread. We changed the way we bake the bread. We added a lot more products. We added toaster ovens. We have we've done a lot of things that have made the business much more complicated. And what's interesting is in the past few weeks, Subway has allowed us to go back to many of those processes we had 24 years ago that made the business much easier to operate.
That's interesting. So it's kind of funny because I was talking to a doctor friend of mine, and I was talking about how this has impacted medicine. And one of the things in the medicine field was that we keep adding regulations, right? We keep adding stuff to our business. And then when you stress it, you're like, all that stuff that we could afford to do before, we can't afford to do that anymore. One was that they changed another set of drugs. So like if you were a Schedule II drug, like you were taking Adderall, you had to get a blood test about it every 6 months, I think. But if you were taking drugs below that, you didn't have to. And I have to take a drug that is like a Schedule III. And they changed the rules so that all those people have to get tested too, which means now I have to go to the doctor twice as much. But they don't want you to come to the doctor right now. And they don't want you to do that, right? So they're like, I don't know what they're going to do about that. Probably just going to blow it off, and the DEA will have to deal with it. But you're seeing that in your business, in that like your Subway added things, and now you're like, we need to back those off.
Absolutely.
Do you think? Did you feel like they needed to be? You didn't want to do them before?
Yes, I felt like they were fluff, if you want to put it that way. I don't think they helped our business that much. A lot of the things, I think the toaster oven was a great addition to Subway, but we used to have to cut 4 little tiny cuts in the bread before we baked it. No reason. They just said it looked better. And they did away with that. They've done away with a lot of the things. Several of the items on the menu, they allowed us to delete those at this time to cut down on waste, because our stores are down. Well, this week we're down about 50%, but we were down as much as 70 to 80% the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I would expect that. But you said the magic word to me, which was bread, because I have been baking. That's my pandemic stress test, whatever. I have done all kinds of baking, and baking is a process. And I guess I realized you guys made your own bread, but that is, how many days does it take you guys to make the bread?
Well, the dough actually comes in frozen.
Okay.
And so that we start the night before with defrosting the dough overnight in the refrigerator. And then it comes out, it has to reach room temperature. Then you put it in the proofer, then you put it in the oven, and about a 2-hour process on that next day.
Okay. So it is, since you're putting it in the proofer, that's normally the second rise in a bread. So you probably had your first rise before it was frozen. And then it's sent to you, and then you pull it out and you rise it again.
It's not par baked at all. It is raw bread dough when we get it.
Okay.
It's frozen. Right. It's about that big around.
Huh. And then it's that big around and that long.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So when it comes out, then it gets bigger because of the yeast, right?
Not like that.
Yeah.
A little bit longer.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's I don't know. Sorry, get off the tangent, but that's what the office hour is all about. I can talk about bread if I want to talk about bread.
I can talk about bread too.
Yeah. It was funny. The other thing that you see everybody doing is sourdough. And people are like, I can't buy yeast. I'm like, well, just set something out for 2 days and you'll have the yeast.
There you go.
So I've done all of that stuff. And it's interesting that because you guys are so consistent. Your bread is exactly the same every day. Where it seems like every time I make a loaf of bread, it's different.
Then we have employees that make it differently sometimes too.
Differently intentionally or differently unintentionally?
Differently unintentionally, usually because they're trying to cut corners. And bread is kind of like Goldilocks. You have to treat it just right or it won't turn out correctly.
Right. So when you rise it, when you put it in the proofing dish, you said, is that in a temperature controlled environment?
Yes, it's 100 to 105 degrees and about 80% humidity.
Okay. Because that's another big thing is like the rises. It really depends. And in Texas, God, the weather's been extra special crazy if you're trying to use, one day I think a week ago, one day it was under 40 degrees one day and over 80 the next.
Yes.
And, bread reacts dramatically different in those two temperature ranges.
It does. Luckily, we have that controlled environment in the proofer.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, given that why I asked how many days is because you would have to predict how much you need in advance.
That's correct.
Even with this, you have to predict it the night before.
Yes, you do.
And how do you guys just wing that? Do you do it based on your own experience? Is there fancy artificial intelligence that tells you how to do it?
Well, there are reports that can tell you how much bread you use each day, how much rung into the register. And you just kind of go from your experience. You look at the day before, at the week before, and you look at the weather. Because if it's cold and wet, we're going to be very much slower than we would be if it's 75, 80 degrees like yesterday and the day before.
Yes, interesting. See, this is the stuff I love about business. And talking to people that I love to talk to people who run businesses that are absolutely nothing like mine or anybody's I know. And you are really the only person I know who runs is it offensive to call it fast food?
It's not offensive. It's supposed to be fast.
Yeah. So a fast food and a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I have another friend. She owns a wing place, but I got to get her on the show. I've wanted to have an interview with her in a long time. I'm going to do that. But yeah. So, and then just combining that with, in this case, baking, which is something I didn't even think about, the fact that you guys make your own bread. And then when you start to know baking, you're like, well, there's a lot of factors in that. And how do you guys control those? And then how does that affect your business? Are there others like that? Like, are there other ingredients that you guys use that you have to make and you have to plan ahead for?
Bread is just about the only one that involves that much prep time and that much forecasting. Yeah. And I always tell people that are learning, it's an art. It's not a science. You have to be able to read the bread.
Yeah. Yeah.
You understand that every day.
Do you guys have to knead it?
No, we don't have to. It's preformed. I wish I had a picture of it. About that long, about that big around.
Yeah. So now you own 8.
Yes.
And I know that you're not in those stores every day. Well,
no,
maybe right now, but not in general. You've done an excellent job of hiring and training and you can't run 8 stores and try to run all 8 of them. You've done a great job of doing that. We can talk about that in a minute. But who does make those decisions? I mean, who is the one that's running? How much bread do we pull out today?
The manager in that store. And some managers need help and some of them don't. But my point is to teach them to make decisions without me.
Right.
They should not have to rely on me to make a decision.
And how do you do that?
You let them make a lot of mistakes. It's the best teacher. You go in and you show them the correct way and you explain it to them and you tell them why,
Mm-hmm.
but then you let them do it and you let them take their little sidetrack that they think might be better and let them see that it didn't work or maybe it is better. And we all start doing that.
Yeah. And do you talk to, like, if they want to try something different, do you talk to them about how to know whether or not it works?
Well, I think if you're talking specifically about the bread, I think they know what it's supposed to look like.
What it's supposed to look like, yeah.
Right. Yes, we have expectations. I hope we set clear expectations with them. It's my goal.
Well, I think a lot of times people want to change things, and so they just want to make a change, and they're not really thinking about what is it. Like, if I make this change, will I know that this change made a difference, like a better difference? You know, like say I decided to, I don't know, start thawing the bread out an hour earlier. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, what difference am I trying to make by doing that? Is it making my life easier because I get to work an hour earlier, or is it why is this change going to be different? And then how will I know that I got that result? Yes, I could, like, because I could make the bread and it could come out looking exactly like it's supposed to look. Then why did I make the change? I don't know. What is it? What is the factor you're looking for? That's kind of my question.
I think in some people that's human nature for them to think that their way is the best way. And sometimes it is better. Some of the best ideas that we have come up with operationally came from an employee saying, why don't you try this? Now, about 90% of the time when they say that, we've already tried it and it didn't work. But I have learned to say, okay, why don't you try that? And let them make the mistake. And then they're much more likely to do it the way that Subway says we're supposed to if they've tried a different way and it didn't work.
Right. And you've also taught them how to handle someone else. Right. That's another instance, is because they're going to come back to you and it doesn't work. And they're going to say, that didn't work. And you're like, I knew it wasn't going to work. Well, why didn't you tell me it wasn't going to work? Because now you wouldn't have believed me if I hadn't told you, or whatever. Right. Like, and too much, it seems like also in our world, there's too much lack of tolerance for other people to make mistakes.
That's huge. And when we hire somebody, and I work a lot with managers, when I hire them, I let them know that they're going to make a lot of mistakes. That if they aren't making mistakes, they aren't trying anything. And we expect the mistakes, and we don't want them making the same mistake 3 or 4 times. They need to learn within the first couple of times, but the mistakes are okay. We are very clear about that. And I didn't used to be that way. I used to be my way or the highway. But I have learned that people are much more comfortable if they know they can make mistakes. And some people beat up on themselves when they make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I always go to the example of, have you ever watched somebody learn to ice skate? They don't glide across the ice gracefully and do some kind of spin or turn the first time they go out there. They fall down, and you will too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I actually was reading something at one point about the fact that you do beat up on yourself. And one of the things she pointed out, she had a friend who, it was the author, what's her name? Jen Cinco, and her latest book is You Are a Badass. But anyway, she was talking about how she had a friend who was just great at stuff, and she went and heard her speak, and she came and she sat down. She goes, "Oh, it's horrible." So she sat down. She's like, "You were great." Like, no, I was. And she just like goes off on her. Says, and then what she told her was, she said, if you saw someone treating someone the way you're treating yourself, what would you think? And what would you tell them? Because many people treat themselves way worse than they would treat other people. And trying to put that into perspective is a good thing.
Well, and people need to be kind to themselves.
Yeah, that is true. So Denise, I know that you actually have a meeting, so we're gonna cut this off in about 5 minutes. But what, other than make mistakes, what else do you tell your people? What are other core values of your business?
Well, we have 7 core values. They are sparkle, integrity, respect, service, industriousness, personal responsibility, excellence, and stewardship. So
now, are those yours? Like specifically to your 8 stores, or are those Subway values?
those are ours. We about 5 years ago, we sat down, about 4 of us sat down and worked on those and came up with those values for our stores.
And which of those was the biggest, I don't know, surprise maybe when you were coming up with them? You're like, this needs to be a value. And I probably wouldn't have thought of that if we hadn't sat down and talked about it.
Sparkle.
And what does sparkle mean?
Sparkle is a positive attitude in the face of whatever comes up, smiling, being cheerful and friendly, even if you have to fake it. I tell people when you walk in this door, you are either an actor or an actress, and you need to perform not only for our customers, but for your coworkers, because nothing makes anybody's day worse than someone having a negative attitude.
Right. Interesting. That is a valuable distinction there too. To do that. So Denise, what would you like to tell me about?
Well, I have done a lot of studying about John Maxwell's materials. I have been certified in the DISC model of human behavior, which I love thinking about it, teaching it to our employees, teaching it to other people, because it changed the way I looked at people, the way I dealt with people, and the way I feel about people, the way people deal with me. I always try to make sure I understand their language and my language and how we're communicating with each other. It's made a huge difference in our operation and understanding the way other people are wired and understanding the way I'm wired.
Okay. And I've put a link. There we go. Get my fingers in the screen. Put a link down here to Denise's page with the Maxwell Group if you would like to contact her and find out more information. Give me an example of how the understanding DISC made a big difference to you.
I am what's called a Heidi Personality, which the word, and it sounds kind of bad, is dominant or directing. I want to be in charge of everything. Doesn't mean that I'm a good leader, but I want to be in charge. I come across as loud and perhaps a bit abrupt, and people misunderstand that because they are perhaps the biggest group is what's called the supportive group. They're very quiet and conservative. They don't like change. And when I come in waving my arms around and being energetic and all of that, it scares them. And I have learned that I have to talk more quietly when I'm speaking to them and more slowly. And I have to listen to them and bite my tongue when they're talking so I don't interrupt them. So it's made a huge difference in my communication.
Yeah. And how did you get yourself to make that change? Because a lot of times I think when we talk about stuff like that, we think that's the way we are. And changing, or at least changing your behavior, even if you're not changing your identity, can be a struggle. So how did you get yourself to slow down?
Well, I began to understand that I could be mature in my style. I could be a strong leader, or I could be a kind of domineering leader. But if I was mature in my style, I would kind of level myself out where I could work with any different personality in their language. It's like if you went to France and you started speaking English, well, many people in France would understand it, but there would be some that would not. And the way I used to be, I would get mad because they didn't understand my English when they were French. But now I understand that I have to learn their language and communicate with them in the way that they receive it the best. And I get much better results if I do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend, I like to tell a story, I don't know why, but about this actually kind of had to do with sparkle and with controlling yourself. He was a dorm director at ACU, And he used to tell me that he always knew they'd get mad when they got in trouble. And he just knew it was going to happen. So he said, I'm just going to stand there and let it go by, right? Like, you're in trouble. And then the guy would go off and scream and holler, and he would just stand there. And because he knew it was going to happen, and he was able to sort of let it flow over him, and not react, right? Which is the deal that I think a lot of times, until you have something that's going to catch you. So like in your case, once you had an understanding that it's not that they're not acting like me, it's that they're acting like them, and I need to understand that they act different than I do. And that kind of gives you a second to step back and say, okay, my actions, their actions, how do I want these to work, kind of thing.
Well, and if you want to communicate with them, truly communicate, you have to speak their language.
Right.
But you can also educate them about your language, and then everybody's responsible.
Yeah. And do you find, how do you find people able to adapt to that? So I'm thinking you can go to someone who's like, saw someone go, look, I can be loud. It doesn't mean that I'm mad. For instance, that would be an instance where a lot of times people hear loud and they think mad. It's not necessarily mad. It's just that you're louder than somebody else. And do you find that people pretty readily understand the differences when you tell them, like, you're a disc this type and I'm disc this type, or you're a disc and this person is this thing, you need to react differently? Do you find people understand that pretty easily?
Well, yes, I think if they're educated in that model of behavior, if they know what other styles do. But I think as the leader in my group, it's my responsibility to communicate with them in the way that they understand best. Now, we give them hints. When you're calling me with a problem, what I like to hear is, you can tell me the problem, but tell me a couple of solutions.
Right.
Don't just tell me the problem and expect me to commiserate with you and pat you on the back and tell you everything's going to be okay. Come with some solutions. My husband used to walk into a store and people would call me and say, why is Tim mad? Well, he's not mad. He's focused on what he's doing. He's very focused. He's a little bit different personality style than I am. And it helped our marriage, because when he didn't answer me when I asked him a question, it's because he was thinking about the question. And I expect an answer just like that, and he has to process it. So for the most part, he's sitting right here. For the most part, I try to allow that time. I try to remind him, getting irritated, I try to remember he's processing what I just said, and appreciate the fact that he does process and doesn't go to snap decisions like perhaps I do. Right.
Well, Denise, that is this has been fascinating stuff, and I'm not surprised. That's why I had you on the show, because I tell people, I had someone the other day say, what kind of person are you looking for on your show? And I said, interesting people. And so that is the reason that you are on the show. It's the reason everybody's on this show. How can people find out more about you and what you do? Well, anyway, however you want to answer that. You answer that however you want to answer it.
Well, they can contact me at the website listed below. My phone number is there. My email is there. And I would be glad to visit with you about leadership, communication. I can even visit with you about speaking and improving your speaking skills. Sales training. I can do any of those things through the John Maxwell team. I'm certified in 2 different companies on the DISC model of human behavior, because I found it so interesting. I wanted multiple viewpoints. So contact me anytime.
All right. Thanks, Denise. And thank you, everybody who has watched this show, and those of you in the future who are here and have stayed this long despite all our technical difficulties. Thank you for doing so. It's great to know that people pay attention to these things, and even when they're watching them later. I had a friend ask me, why do you do DFL? And I said, and what do you get out of it? And I said to him, well, I like it when people do what I say. And I didn't mean that I like them to do what I tell them to do. I like to know that they put into action stuff that I was trying to teach. And so if you have stayed with this show through the craziness that was the beginning, And through all of this, I hope you've gotten something valuable out of it. And I hope you get stuff valuable out of my Sunday video. So every Sunday I come out with a new distinctions video. And my biggest desire for you when you do that is to put those things into action so that you can get what you really want in life. Until next time, I'm Ron Davis. And I have to click the button twice to exit out of StreamYard, and I don't particularly like that.